And one of the girls that read really did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
They all did, but she was just particularly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great that they come, all four of them, and sit through church and they behave.
Mhm.
They're cute. They're really cute.
All right, prayer of the day. Let's pray. Dear Lord.
Enter
you
into our praise and requests,
And
come
on us. By your gracious life and death for us, bring light into the darkness of our hearts, and anoint us with your spirit. For we live and reign with the Father and the Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
First reading, 1 Samuel 16, 1 through 13. Lord said to Samuel, how long will you grieve over Saul? I have rejected him for being king over Israel. Fill your horn with oil and set out. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided for myself a king among his sons. Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hears of it, he will kill me. And the Lord said, take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you will do, and you shall anoint for me the one whom I name to you. Saul did what the Lord commanded and came to Bethlehem. The elders of the city came to meet him trembling and said, do you come peaceably? He said, peaceably. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Sanctify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. And he sanctified Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they came, he looked on Eliab, and thought, surely the Lord anointed is now before the Lord. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I've rejected him. For the Lord does not see as mortal sees. They look on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass by. And he said, neither has the Lord chosen this one. Jesse made seven of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen any of these. Samuel said to Jesse, are all your sons here? And he said, there remains yet the youngest, and he is keeping the sheep. And Samuel said to Jesse, send and bring him, for we will not sit down until he comes here. He sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and had beautiful eyes and was handsome. And the Lord said, rise and anoint him, for this is the one. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon David from that day forward. Samuel then went out and went to Ramah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The anointing of David. It almost feels like Cinderella, like tries it on the one stepsister, shoe doesn't fit. Tries it on the other stepsister, shoe doesn't fit. Like, you must have another daughter. Well, just Cinderella in the corner. The shoe fits.
I was thinking maybe they got that story from this one.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, it's not what's the outward, it's the inward.
Right.
Although they spoke of David in a
Right.
beautiful eyes and handsome, so they looked at the outside
Yeah.
appearance too.
There was a contradiction there.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's, it's not what you exhibit, but what you do, or
Yeah.
how you act.
Right, well, Samuel looked for a king based on, physical statures and poise. God instructed him to suspend human logic and instead to trust divine guidance. That was what one of the professors mentioned.
Mhm.
And God's guidance may not be discernible in the moment as it is in hindsight. we may not see what God is doing in our midst or how God is leading us at the time until later.
This reminds me of a current popular song that is out and talks about David took a rock to a sword fight and Christ picked 12 nobodies to change the world. You know, it's you don't have to be Tom Selleck to you know, be a hero. I'm wearing the mask because Cindy's been ill and I don't have any indications, but who knows?
Is she okay?
Oh, yeah, she's never gotten really sick. She's just tired. But yes, she seems to be fine now. So,
Oh, thank you
yeah.
for your consideration.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, since the beginning, you know, it's not even just a New Testament thing, this sort of like idea that God is looking for something different than what we think we need in a leader, especially, you know, like, well, it's not going to be any of those. He didn't go with the first in line, right? Because birthright is such a big deal in this culture, like the first son. So like being the last son, David also had the least amount of status, not just that he was smaller and younger, but that he would have the least amount of status and he would inherit the least amount and those sorts of things. That it's the like least of these that is chosen to be the king. It's pretty big deal. The first half of the reading is interesting to me. Like everybody's afraid of Saul.
Yes, Samuel was afraid that he'd be killed.
Yeah. You come peaceably. He's just there to choose the king, but they're all very. Oh, it's Samuel. Okay, sorry, I missed it. Samuel does the anointing, so he's afraid. Saul, that's why Samuel's afraid, because Saul is like, you're going to challenge my place on the throne. Okay.
For a long time, they didn't tell anybody about David.
Right. He was anointed long before he became king.
Yeah.
What are things that you have been chosen to do that you were surprised by that you didn't think you were worthy of?
A lot of things.
That takes some thought.
Mhm. Well, I think of, you know, I'm still young. I haven't done a lot of things. But you know, I feel like getting a job is pretty hefty. It's like, oh yeah, I think I can do that. And then you get there, you're like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You figure it out, people help you out. But yeah, at least for me, it takes a while to gain confidence in a new type of thing for me. So yeah, I would say getting this job here at Morningstar was I did not know if I was up to the task. But
you have been.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
doing a
I think so.
splendid job.
Now I feel like I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
Not necessarily
You are.
like top of the top, but you know, passable. I'm doing a passable job, I think.
A great job.
See, more than passable.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah.
guess my first command in the military, but that was because I was a platoon leader in charge of a group of soldiers in Germany. But I'd gone to our artillery officer training. And then they sent me to Germany. Well, they needed me in Germany so fast to replace the outgoing people. They didn't send me to the school
Oh.
to learn how to shoot the nuclear missile.
Oh,
And so literally it was, on the job
Training.
training
yeah.
on how to fire this missile.
Mhm.
And it was a tumultuous year. But because of a good sergeant, we went to the island of Crete for an evaluation. And our battery, which would be about 60 soldiers, was voted, or then we weren't voted, we earned best in NATO. So it was a NATO evaluation of the British, the French, the Belgians, the Germans, and the Americans on how we functioned. And we were the best. So I guess it worked.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy that year.
Yeah.
My first year of teaching third graders was a learning
Oh,
experience,
yeah.
and I learned quickly how to avoid certain problems.
Uh-huh.
But, and so that, I'm sure every teacher goes through that, but
Yeah, there's only so much you can learn.
You learn more
When
than
you're
the
a
kids do
student.
the
I
first
know.
year.
Mhm.
I
Taught high
I have
school.
not had kids, but I feel like parenthood is probably similar.
oh, yes.
Definitely.
Like, because there's so much information out there. Like, as a non-parent, I am overwhelmed with the thought of trying to sort through how to be a good parent. And I think, right, once you get there in all of these situations, you do what you can. You do your best and you do what you can.
Mhm.
And that's all you can do. And I think, the fact that Samuel trusted the Lord and listened and went ahead and anointed David, that David's family, didn't kill him for, they didn't riot. That,
Yeah, I'm the biggest and the strongest. How come you took this little run,
Yeah.
right? But they,
He's never
they let
done
him be
it.
anointed. They let the process happen. And, I don't,
Got to stop and think.
Rod, you could fill us in on what happens after this. Like you said, they don't tell a lot of people that David is the one that's anointed for. They had a strategy, I guess.
But I think the strategy was stay away from Saul, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
David wasn't smart enough to do that, and went and worked with him and became best friends with his son, and
Mhm. Jonathan,
yeah,
Mm.
so but he was smart enough to let God be in charge of the process. And that's many times been my downfall. I want to make it happen quicker.
Yeah.
Get in there and just, do it.
we think we can do it on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd think that at my age, I would have learned already that, first step in every action, if you want to be successful, is ask God to help you. And I still keep jumping in on my own, and then when I get in trouble, then I ask God to help me.
Yep. But God is there.
He is always there.
He says, okay, here we go. Let's fix your mess. Yeah. 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 I feel like it's all about trust. In a new situation, you don't know if you're up for the task. You just gotta trust that what you do is that God is always with you to get you through, that this situation is happening for a reason, that, and the people around you, right? Like, I think everything we do, we have to trust those people around us.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing we have to do is trust God, trust the fact that He loves us and will protect us if we're not stupid. And And even sometimes when we are stupid, he still protects us. Yeah,
The little devotional I read today, it was simply, in the beginning, there was God. The very first words in Genesis. Like an Alpha and an Omega, there's always God. In the beginning, there was God, there'll always be God, no matter when or what. I guess that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's difficult to believe it. There's no beginning because he was always there. And you think there's got to be a beginning somewhere, but
Yeah.
that's hard for me to comprehend.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And an end.
Right,
Supposedly there's no end.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have to trust.
I read
It's a
some-
thing that's easier said than done.
We go on to Psalm.
Yeah.
Maybe we should read it
Okay.
together. The Lord
Is my shepherd. I
Right.
shall not be in want. The Lord makes me lie down in green pastures.
And leads me beside still waters. You restore my soul, Lord, and guide me along right pathways for your name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your eyes, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup is running over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Do kids still memorize that?
No.
Bible still, see, we, at our age, I'm sure we all did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
not that version, but.
No, it was a little different.
Yeah, the first time I ever heard that, I was a young kid and watching a war movie, and the
Mm,
chaplain was reciting that for a bunch of soldiers before they were going into battle.
Oh,
And
that would be the right thing to read, wouldn't it?
And then today somebody would say you can't do that because,
Oh, yes,
yeah.
you know.
yes,
Yeah.
it's,
I wonder if they still even have chaplains in the service.
Yes.
Oh,
they
yeah.
do.
for sure.
And you can look over the, I hate to say it, but the last 20 years, all the conflicts, they pray all the time before they go out. You
Do they?
see pictures of soldiers taking a knee in a circle.
Really good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's a personal thing, but
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
I have a friend that is a Air Force chaplain. And is. That, yeah, a very, like, went to seminary to become an Air Force chaplain, like very, really felt called into that specific military
great.
chaplain call.
Hmm.
Yeah. Definitely still a thing. I mean, they come in all denominations, they're not
Yeah,
all Christian.
right.
but- Mhm.
Hmm.
The other side too, since we're talking, I mean, when a soldier's killed, there's a, I won't say religious ceremony, but I mean, there's undoubtedly prayer said where you've seen the rifle upside down,
Mhm, yeah.
with the bayonet, the boots and the helmet. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a solemn religious, I mean, they're gonna say a
Yeah.
prayer there.
So, an interesting tie, that we didn't actually talk about this in the Samuel reading, but that David was a shepherd, right? So that was part of this like topsy-turvy, why would you choose him, of like a shepherd king? And
Mhm.
when we talk about both Christ the King and Good Shepherd, right? Those are both Sundays we have every year in the
Mhm.
liturgy. That Jesus was a shepherd king, and that concept in itself is very weird. That you would think of a king as a shepherd. So David is a shepherd king. like was literally watching the sheep and had to be pulled away to be anointed. And then coming to the Lord is my shepherd. Guides you. That we got Jesus the shepherd on our canvas over there.
And we are the flock. in other
Yeah,
words.
we are the flock.
Any idea where that's going to end up?
I do not know.
Isn't that
Blind to me.
fascinating, the way
It's the first, when you
we
alluded,
Oh.
and I go, what? Walked right by it, sat here, looked at Rod, didn't see it.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
can you miss that?
that's from Sunday's service. The artist painted that in.
Were you here?
Yes, in the service. No,
All right, that was up front
Mhm.
and he's painting for a while and then he turns it completely upside down and
Yeah.
continues the
Yeah.
painting.
Yeah, he started upside down
Unbelievable.
and then flipped.
Unbelievable.
I watched it online.
Oh, did
It
you?
was fascinating, yes.
Give a good shot of it
Oh,
online?
yes.
Huh?
And then also they point to, like, I got to see Bev watch, play the organ
oh,
and Rick.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they always do that. They always show the organist
Oh, that's
when you
good.
watch online.
Yeah.
Well, for a little
Yeah,
while.
yeah.
mhm.
I was
Yeah.
talking to Cindy, because we were watching it online too. and she
Uh-huh.
said, oh, he flipped it over. He did
Yeah.
it."
Yeah, everybody
Right.
just gasped.
Yeah.
I said, well, he must not do faces very well. Everything is perfect.
That would be difficult.
Yeah.
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 He, so. Like, if you didn't- he paints it right in the 1 hour, like the
Yeah.
whole thing was done from
Mhm.
blank canvas to that in the church service.
Yeah,
He
the
also
service
did-
wasn't done in an hour, but he
Well,
was.
right, right, yeah.
That's right.
And
Um,
it was kind of the sermon
Little sermon, yeah.
that he talked about the painting, and so pastor didn't give a sermon.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so like all of our sort of Lenten stories, this Lent, each Wednesday, there's a, whatever that little story is that the pastors preach on. Most of them are incorporated in this. And we'll hear the third one today, which is about Paul and Silas being freed. He mentioned that on Sunday.
Oh.
That's who the two in the back are with the chains.
Oh, really? Oh, those are chains. Oh, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, that's today's reading, so
Oh.
tune in today at 6 o'clock.
Oh, those chains.
You mean it's online at 6 o'clock?
The midweek Lenten service.
Oh, gee, I've been
Yes.
missing those.
Cause I asked about that earlier and, because, last week. I came, but, Cindy's.
Oh,
sorry,
it
but
wasn't online?
I
am I
didn't
speaking too
even
soon?
check because I asked them and I thought they said no.
I know that Ash Wednesday noon service didn't make it up. And then we didn't have the Ash Wednesday evening
I-
service. I thought the midweek services were, I'll
I
check before we all leave today.
Yeah,
I didn't
I thought they were,
find that.
but it's at 6 o'clock. It's Holden evening prayer.
yeah, and the Holden service is so pretty anyway,
Mhm.
so. We brought Walter for the first time last Wednesday.
Oh, you're.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah.
that was a record, I think. How old was he? How many days old?
It was like almost 4 weeks.
He was good too.
I'll turn the volume down. I'm checking.
Suppose
Okay,
his
we're going.
baptism will be coming up.
As
Soon.
soon as they figure it out, but yeah, he was a month old yesterday,
He's got plenty of time to get baptized.
yeah.
Okay, anyway. I'll look it up later. Okay. Anything else about the psalm? I mean, yeah, it's favorite. That so pleasant, right? And it is about trusting. It's about trusting the shepherd to lead you through. And it's like sometimes you'll be by the green pastures and still waters, and sometimes it'll be in the shadow of death. But the shepherd still leads you through. It doesn't promise the bad things won't happen, but that you won't be alone in the bad things. You anoint my head with oil.
It's just the journey of life. and is with you. And in the end, you know, you'll dwell in his house forever.
Yeah.
We move on to Ephesians.
Mhm. I can read that.
Is this,
Once you were darkness, but now in the Lord you are light. Live as children of light, for the fruit of the light is found in all that is good and right and true. Try to find out what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to mention what such people do secretly. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible. For everything that becomes visible is light. Therefore, it says, sleeper, awake, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you.
Definitely different imagery than the shepherd.
I wrote down, apparently we talked about this another time. This may not be authentic Paul.
Mm.
And I also wrote, it's not a favorite book of our pastor.
Sounds about right.
I found that strange when Pastor said that, because one of the men that helped me be a better Christian, it was his favorite book.
Oh.
I like it too.
Each
So,
to his own.
Yeah.
well, this couple, this section struck home with me, because when I decided, maybe I should say, when Cindy decided that I needed to be a better Christian man, I started, and a friend of mine was working on me to try to help me be a better Christian man. Well, at the time I was playing poker with a bunch of guys once a week, and drinking, and I thought, well, I can still do that. And
Sure.
then I thought, well, maybe if I'm a better person, I can help them be a better person. Didn't work that way. They just, every time I went, I felt guilty, because I knew that they were having more impression on me than I was having on them. And finally, I just had to give it up. And, I enjoyed the task. I enjoyed the friendship, but it just wasn't going to be a place where I would improve myself at all. So it was probably the most notable thing in my life that I had to give up if I wanted to, try and change my life. Sometimes we have to give up things that we like when we know that they're not good things for us. Turned out it wasn't that big a deal after all.
You didn't really miss them all that much after all. At
After,
first, maybe.
yeah, at first, but not after that.
Yeah. And I think the imagery of dark and light, of like choosing to be in the light instead of the dark, but sometimes like the lights get switched, right? Everything is exposed. Yeah.
And that's the part when when you're espousing what a great Christian person you are, and then all of a sudden something comes to light and shows, oh, I guess you weren't. And that is something that not only drags you down, but if you're a person out there saying what a great person you are, it makes everybody else think less of other Christians.
Yeah.
And you think of some of the priests and pastors who have been exposed for not being good people.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. So there's two things that come, one is like, how you act when nobody's watching is your true self sort of thing. I feel like that fits in with this, like, if you were exposed, would you still be proud of who you are? But then there's also the sort of like dance like no one's watching.
Mhm.
Like, don't be afraid of being who you are as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think shame can be so powerful. And for me, shame is not a good motivator.
yeah,
Some people are like, oh, well, if you want to change, just change. I'm like, well, I'm stuck in the shame. I can't change anything, So yeah, I don't like to think in terms of shame, because for me, shame is it freezes me. But thinking about, how do I be an authentic person to where if you turned on the lights, no one would be surprised.
I used to live with a lot of guilt about, we all have done stupid things in our life. And I came to realize that if I don't throw away that guilt, I don't really believe in God, because he told me he took away all of that sin and that guilt. And it took me a long time to come to terms with, I already turned it over to God. And if I mess up again, do something stupid, which of course I will, all I have to do is just ask God to forgive me and give it to him, and let that shame and guilt go away. And because if I truly believe in God, I know he's taken it and he's forgiven me.
Take the Psalm in the second reading, you can talk about fear. And the darkness is fear, when you can't see, when you don't know what's there, when you don't know what's going on. How can you walk a path? Well, you can walk the path, in the pastures and beside the water with God guiding you. He's the light. He is the one that takes away the fear. He's the one that lets you see, awake, arise, the light of Christ shining, leading that path. Kind of disjointed thoughts.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No, I thought
No,
that's a great
that's-
conclusion.
A good point.
Yeah.
I didn't speak it well.
Yes.
Yeah. So the reading tonight, which is not one of these today, of Paul and Silas are wrongfully imprisoned. They're singing through the night, right? They don't lose faith. An earthquake comes and all of the prisoners' bonds are undone, but they don't leave, right? So when the jailer wakes up, he's very afraid.
And he's
That-
ready to kill himself.
Yeah, because he knows that he's going to be punished for letting all these prisoners escape. But they call out like, no, we're still here. We didn't leave. Right. So the transformation is really well, okay. So then the jailer is very humbled that these people stuck around, even though their bonds were opened, and is baptized. And Paul and Silas stay. They wait until they're like the proper channels say that they are free to go. They don't just leave, and so they don't leave the jailer to this terrible fate. But I've been doing a prayer station every week that I don't think anybody's used it, but it's out there if you're looking for something interesting. So the prayer station.
It's out in the lobby.
Mhm,
I've seen it.
yeah. Yeah,
As we walk through, is it in front of the plain glass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
We'll
I'm gonna
take a-
switch it after this.
We'll
So
take
if you
better
want
look at
the
it.
one that I'm about to talk about, like I can hand it to you because it's not out there yet. It's in my office. But so what I did for the prayer station was wove some yarn to where it looks like jail bars. So there's 3 straight lines of yarn on this, it's just cardstock. But what are the things that make you feel separated from God? Cut them, cut those bars down, open the bonds, and know that, like, don't do that as in like those things are now gone and you have cut the separation between you and God, but do that as a reminder that there isn't actually a barrier between you and God's love. That
It's from your perspective.
right, we forget
Yes.
all the time, but God has already removed all the barriers. So we still need to remind ourselves and let God remind us and let our church and our community remind us. But the lights already are on, right? Like the barriers have already been torn down. We just forget all the time. We need a constant reminder. In last week's reading, the woman at the well, which again, we like didn't get a whole sermon on, but we got the painting
It's
where
there.
he did talk about it and the well is there. Yeah. That Jesus says you won't need to drink this water every day, you'll already have it, right? So like in baptism, we are sanctified, right? That's why we don't get baptized multiple times in our lives. We only need it one time. But it's like we do need a constant reminder because we forget. It doesn't mean that we're not sanctified anymore. It doesn't mean that we didn't get baptized. It just means that we forget, and we should do as much as we can to remember. Because we're really good at forgetting, but God is always sending us reminders. And sometimes it's our own selves getting in the way of realizing that. And that's when you decide to let the shame go, decide to tear down that barrier that you've made. But God has already torn down all the barriers, which is very reassuring to me because I feel the pressure a lot. I put a lot of pressure on myself. It's like, it doesn't matter. God already tore down all the barriers. So
That's good. A good reminder.
yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons that we should have the baptismal font out and visible, where it's there all the time to remind us.
Is that the way it's going to be when they remodel? It
That's the-
sounds like it.
That's the plan.
And what is that a light above it? Or
Mhm.
is it
Yeah,
a
it'll
big round
have,
light?
so the idea, we don't know exactly how they'll do it, is that there will be, a special ceiling above it that has lights in it so that it's not really like a spotlight, but so that it'll be lit well and be this sort of nice, because they won't have walls around it or anything, and it's not going to be confined in, it's not just a little, well, it's not a little bowl. It's not the bowl that we currently have. It'll be this fountainy thing. But to like place it, there will be that light in the ceiling. Yeah. I'm also excited about that. I think that would be really cool. So the gospel's really long.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah, we hope it's even longer now.
Yeah, we thought last week's was long. Welcome to this week.
I'll start reading and when somebody else take over.
Okay.
As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, is this not the man who used to sit and beg? Some were saying, it is he. Others were saying, no, but it is someone like him. He kept saying, I am the man. But they kept asking him, then how were your eyes opened? He answered, the man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. Then I went and washed and received my sight. They said to him, where is he? He said, I do not know. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, he put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see. Somebody else can say.
Oh, some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath. But others said, how can a man who is a sinner perform such signs? And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, what do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened. He said, he is a prophet. The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, is this your son who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but we do not know how it is that now he sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age, he will speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, he is of age, ask him.
So for the second time, they called the man who had been blind and said to him, give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner. He answered, I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. They said to him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? He answered them, I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? Then they reviled him, saying, you are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from. The man answered, here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. They answered him, you were born entirely in sins, and you are trying to teach us? And they drove him out.
Jesus heard that they had driven him out. And when he found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? He answered, and who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him. Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he. He said, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. Jesus said, I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind, and those who do see may become blind. That's what it says. Some of the Pharisees near him heard this and said to him, surely we are not blind. Are we? Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would not have sinned. But now that you say, we see, your sin remains. That doesn't make sense.
No,
I don't get it.
if you were born,
Yeah.
you would
It's
not have
confusing
sinned.
because it sounds like God wants some
But
people
now
not to,
what you say is-
not to worship him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so why aren't they forgiven?
You were
Yeah,
blind,
like
you
verse
were
31. We
sinned.
know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does. I'm like, okay, well, guess we're all screwed. You know, like,
And in the beginning, Jesus answered, let's see. Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. Well, is that true of, our grandson is severely autistic. And
You know, I've wrestled with that question all my life, because there's always people that you feel sorry for, or people who have less abilities than you, or have some type of physical ailment. And think, why would God do this? If we're all created in God's image, why would he make some people less than others? And I think many times it's to see how we treat them, and to see what we do for those people who are less fortunate than us. And
Well, I
you know,
also,
to have
I don't
us-
think that having a disability makes you less. It makes your life harder because the world is built for able-bodied people,
Yeah,
but I don't think having a disability makes you less. And I think this is a really hard thing to wrestle with in these healing miracle texts. Of like, if God has this power, why isn't he healing everyone? And yeah, so we definitely know that people aren't born with disabilities because their family sinned, but it also feels unfair to say that they were born so that God's works might be revealed in
I
him,
know, it's
right?
unfair to that person.
Yeah, so, we live in a ableist world, I would say, where people who are able-bodied have it easier than people who are not, like I broke my foot, which is a truly just a minor inconvenience. And it's very easy to see how if you cannot walk and rely on aids to get around, or if you cannot drive, how hard it is to function in society at the level that I was when I could walk and when I could drive,
yeah. Well, the first thing, you have to rely on other people,
Right,
Mhm.
right.
and that's something that we're taught, we gotta do it ourselves. But maybe letting other people help us is something that we have to learn to be able to do, because I know when I'm able to help somebody, it makes me feel really good. And we need to allow other people to feel that good, when they help us.
Mhm.
And of course, some people are gonna think, oh gee, I have to go pick Rod up again, But I think, most of the time, they enjoy doing it, and
Mhm. Yeah, well, and then also, I think the disability community itself is often like, we're not great at asking them what they need. We assume
Yeah.
the type of help they need. We're not great at asking them what they need. And some of the best ways to help them is to make a more accessible world so that they can have more autonomy and make their own choices.
There's a
Yeah.
young gentleman at the ranch. He's 15 now, I think. So he's been at the ranch for 10, 12 years. Watched him grow up, and his heart and lungs aren't normal.
Mm.
And he literally is constantly on a trach with oxygen. He's not handicapped, not at all. I mean, Sunday at the ranch, it was like he's outside running around playing with the animals, and he loves chickens, and he jumps in the dusty, dirty chicken coops and picks up chickens, and we kind of call him Chicken Whisperer. But nothing holds him back, and he's there several times a week, and he just loves animals. And he in himself is a great advocate for the ranch, because his love of animals motivates him and keeps him moving. I don't look at him as handicapped. I just pray that he's able to grow. And I know that, but great young man, although I still get him. I just always, Justin, what's that? Oh, I shouldn't say his name. And I touch his chest, he looks down, I get him damn near every time, thump him in the nose. You think he'd learn. But remarkable. And I take inspiration in just seeing him. It's like, it's cold, I don't want to go outside. And he's out there running around.
Many times I think that, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Maybe should be rewritten, do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Because we, as mostly able people,
Do-gooders.
yeah, we think, oh, this is what this person needs. And we don't, if we don't ask them, if we don't know them, how do we know what they really need?
The again, here, this taking it in a different sense, than some of the other readings we've got, it goes back to light and darkness. His eyes are closed, he's living in darkness, but yet he has no fear. He can't see the path going forward, but yet he does. He's able to live and survive in the darkness because he has faith, he has belief. And then giving him light, the light of God, Jesus restores his vision. He just sees better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so this healing story is different than most of the others because we get the sort of what happens next to the person that is healed, right? Jesus heals lots of people in lots of different ways. Sometimes he just like touches them, boom, healed. This guy, mud on the eyes. That must not have been pleasant, whatever. Then he bathes in the pool. Sometimes he's telling them just to bathe. Anyway, there's all these things that Jesus heals in different ways. But then we hear what happens next, right? Because the story always ends like they ran off and told everyone they know, right? Like they're going and testifying to this experience they've had with Jesus, that Jesus has healed them. But this guy, we see that because he's healed, his family rejects him. They leave him out. So they're like, yeah, he's our son. He was blind, but we don't know how. You better ask him. Like they don't defend him. And he's ultimately cast out of the temple. He's like rejected by the religious community, which had much more standing than our churches do today, right? Like that was the epitome of culture, and how you got your status in society was through the temple. And he's cast out, but then Jesus brings him in. Jesus is the one that doesn't abandon him, that says, you believe, I have healed you. And I like to think that when they moved on to the next town, that man got to come with them. He was not left in this place that had rejected him. It's an interesting take on community, right? Like so much of my faith is based on community and wanting to make a right community and believing that Jesus was teaching us how to make a right community. But here's a faith community rejecting the man who was transformed by Jesus.
Do you think his parents rejected him so they could stay in the temple?
I think so. Yeah, they were scared. Yeah. And then starting at verse 35, where it gets like wildly confusing. That's more metaphorical, I would say, like spiritual blindness. I don't fully understand it.
What was that again?
Starting at verse 35, where it starts talking about those who are blind are sinless and blah blah blah. That's much more metaphorical. They're talking about blindness because this man was physically healed of his blindness, but
there's another form of blindness,
right? The spiritual blindness. And Jesus is like calling the Pharisees like spiritually blind, basically. I don't, that'd be a good pastor question. That's where my limits on that, understanding of that kind of end.
They can't see what's right before them, the Pharisees.
Yeah.
And they can't hear it, and they don't believe it. They can't see it, they can't hear it. You need our senses, and you think, if I can touch it, I know that cup exists because it's in my hand, I can feel it. But is there a cup now? I'm not touching it, I can see it. Okay, I'm using my other sense. Well, they heard the work, they saw the work, and they couldn't believe it. They're ignorant, or they're choosing to be ignorant.
They
of the
were so
facts.
filled with hate toward him. They just wouldn't accept anything he did. It seemed.
Right,
Right.
yeah, this like common trope of when he does something on the Sabbath, that all ultimately means he's a sinner.
Mhm.
Because a righteous person wouldn't do that on the Sabbath because that's breaking the rules. They're
Yeah.
constantly stuck in
They
the
were
law.
so insistent on following the law.
Mhm.
And when he would kind of revert away from it.
Yep.
They couldn't accept that.
There's black and white. That's kind of what I was talking about, touching the cup and pick, black and white. It's a leap of faith, pun intended, to believe in God. And they believe in God, but they can't believe in God when they see God in front of them. They can't make that leap of faith.
Yeah, they're trusting what they think they know.
The black and the white
Right.
instead of what's written. It's written, so we got to follow it, and they can't think outside the box.
Yep. Well, and I mean, we give them a lot of slack for that, but we're the same way.
We're the same way.
We're
aren't
the
we?
same.
We got our faults too.
What do you mean?
In
It's,
different ways,
Right?
maybe.
yeah, that like trusting what you know or you think you know versus trusting this new unknown thing that like, how do we know we can trust this Jesus guy? Like, what do you mean he's the one? Like, if somebody were to get magically healed, magically healed today, I would not think that it was God. I would think that it was BS,
Medicine.
right? Be like, we don't really do that in our church, right? Like faith healing is not really a part of our practice these days. But it would be very easy to miss, I think, if this sort of thing were to happen today. I'd be like, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot in here. It's also a kind of a fun melodrama, right? Like, it's like, how are your eyes? Are you the blind man? Like, we have to confirm that you're the blind man first. We can't let you, it's just so unbelievable. We
Yeah,
gotta
they-
call your parents to make
Couldn't
sure that
believe
you
it.
are in fact the blind guy.
When they say no, you're of age, so he's of age, so he can answer him for himself.
Yeah. Like, you can imagine doing the, like, how many fingers am I holding up? You sure you can can actually see them? Like, I did all these tests to make sure that he was in fact seeing now, and his comment that I have told you already, you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? And they're like so offended that he would accuse them of wanting to be Jesus' disciples because they're so interested in how he was healed.
I
Yeah.
thought the blind man, God gave him a good power of speech after that.
Mhm.
Like you said, just because he was blind didn't mean he was stupid, and just mean he wasn't unlearned. And,
Right.
so he was a pretty good spokesman for God after, who knows, maybe he was before.
Mhm.
And nobody paid attention to it because he was blind.
Right.
But it's ironic. You are his disciple. We are disciples of Moses. Okay. We know that God has spoken to Moses. And as for this man, we do not know where he comes. Okay, you can believe that God would speak to Moses. Okay, did Moses go up on the mountain and carve the 10 Commandments himself and say, God spoke to me? How did you believe then that God was speaking through Moses? Why can't you believe now that God is speaking through his son?
Mhm.
You say that, but you don't accept the parallel.
Yeah. Faith is weird.
Sorry, I need to run.
I did, while you're all still here, I did look it up. Wednesday's services are going on live on Facebook.
Oh,
I didn't realize that.
And Rod, you're reading Sunday.
I'll-
And you.
Oh, do you get to read,
Offering the communion.
you get to read this whole thing on Sunday?
No, the pastor reads that.
Oh, that's right,
That's
that's
the
right, that's the
gospel,
gospel. Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you, I'll be here.
Okay.
So, all right, we want to close with the Lord's Prayer.
okay.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead not us into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
I'm in an organization that says that, and they use the word debts. And I
Oh,
slip on that every now and then.